Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Immersive podcast. Very happy today to have our guest, Tim Tactics. He is a governance expert from Europe. Germany is where I believe he's from specifically, right, Tim?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. For decades, he's worked as a tactical advisor within, covert sectors of the government in Europe, which aims, amongst other things, to really understand the missions and strategies of, we'll say extraterrestrials or non-human entities, non-human intelligences on our planet and beyond. He's had plenty of face-to-face contacts with extraterrestrials of different races. He specifically, I know, has had a lot with the Greys, at least from what I've heard. And Tim has appeared, it's funny, we were talking about this earlier, but he's close to his 100th episode, appearing on Gaia TV as an expert on many of their different shows, particularly Cosmic Disclosure, which is their number one show. Tim, I've seen you on there a ton, so it's cool to have you here. And of course, he also talks about his experience with, which something that I'm super passionate about, is advanced technologies that are typically hidden behind closed doors to the general public, shares insider information and things like that. He's been doing so for a decade or longer. And it's really great to have him here. And he's throwing the All Shift Happily Now conference, part of the group that's throwing the All Shift Happily Now conference in October. And we'll talk more about that. Real quick, I just want to shout out our affiliate sponsors, GFL, Galactic Federation of Light. I'm wearing one of their Merkaba t-shirts, and if you use the code Tyler33, you get a free hat with your order. And also a shout out to Unified TV. We appreciate them. The link's in the bio. There's a free trial, and there's a little discount monthly subscription, and then the year is a little cheaper even. Tim, thank you for taking my intro there, and hope I did okay introducing you. How are you doing today?
Very fine. Thank you so much for being on this podcast and for having me on this podcast. And it's true. We are almost getting to 100 shows on Gaia. Not only Cosmic Disclosure, Truth Hunter. I did with Linda Moulton-Howe, which was kind of a funny adventure with her. She's lovely. Certain other stuff too, and I was mostly in two. I've done some conventional stuff too, but exopolitical governance. I was in two programs. One of them involved finding out what the Greys are about, or the species that we call the Greys, and the other one was being 6, or Lebensform 6, and we looked into a very high frequential and very highly experienced life form too.
Yeah, that's cool. I've of course read a lot about and watched, personally as a fan, a colleague, or whatever, in many different fashions, your talks on the Greys. And actually recently I saw you talking about even frog beings. Hadn't heard as much about the others, though, which actually are kind of sounding a little more like, I've been using the term extraterrestrial less and the term extra dimensional more. You think that sounds correct? Terrestrial as like just of this world. I think it's more of a. I mean, you've had much more contact than I have. Is it more of an extra dimensional thing or more of a typical understanding of extraterrestrial thing?
It depends. I mean, I was in the beginning of coming forward. I was very, because that's been brought into me quite a lot. I was very on point with the definitions of all these life forms. However, this is just humans categorizing what's around us, out of us, outside of us, inside of us, or on different layers. So the universe is quite an interesting architecture because it has all these different worlds and levels of reality and levels of beings everywhere. So some exist on a very similar plane as we as Earthlings, and they come in physical forms and they are very comparable. Could even be, some of them could even walk on this planet and live here among us, and would have not a big issue with that. Some can only come for certain time. Some can't even, penetrate the layers of realities, and some can, zone in and zone out. So the universe is extremely complex in that perspective. And it's just let me add one thing, because it's funny that you were mentioning the
Absolutely.
frog beings, because this is like my second or third interview today, but in every one the frog
They brought
beings
up.
were mentioned.
It's
And
interesting.
the background story to that is that when I was in the program and we were, doing investigating or looking into the phenomena of the grays, they were actually saying at one point, quite late in the program, was saying, "Hey Tim, you should meet these frog beings." And at that point, and I think I always point that out. It can be extremely stressful to be in these programs and having close contact and doing all that stuff. So I wasn't.
Combination.
I didn't want to meet them at that time, even though I was offered that. The second time it came up, I was in the USA, and I was meeting with some people from the US military, and they brought it up in that conversation. I was saying, hey, that's kind of interesting, because that's the second time that I hear about these frog people, because I've been asked actually to
Of
be on a
course.
project with them. And after they had a phone call and came back to me and said, like, Tim, tonight we actually got permission. We want you to come to the base and we want you to make contact with them.
Wow.
That was the second time that I actually rejected that offer, because ultimately at that time I had a business meeting at the very same time. I had to prioritize things.
That's
So
quite
I
the
had to
experience.
say no. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So that was like my second time, and again, it just came up in one of the other interviews, and that person was saying, "Hey, Clifford Stone, do you know Clifford Stone?" And I was like, "I'm not quite sure, but I think he's on Gaia too." And he said,
I saw
"Yes,
that interview and I
I
didn't
had
know
an
who
interview
Clifford
with
Stone
Clifford
was
Stone."
either.
He brought up like lots and lots of ET stuff, and he said. He told me
Oh
this one
yeah.
story that Clifford Stone was brought to I think it was Vietnam. So in the middle of the Vietnam War, he was a veteran at that time, and they were out there investigating a crash site, and they found a UFO. And in the very moment when he pushed or leaned against the wall of that UFO, he fell into it. And he was reporting meeting these frog beings that were
Oh,
then in contact with the US military. So it's the third time they come up well, today actually.
so that
So
was during the Vietnam
it's
War.
it's very interesting that you're
It
mentioning them.
is. That's something that it's. I think that's cool that you told me that that's been brought up to you multiple times today. Because yeah, I mean, I've done my fair bit of research and not something that I've really read or heard or even has came to me really much at all. Yeah, same thing kind of has been popping up lately. And that's another thing that I find interesting is, of course, a lot of us, at least in circles, in the disclosure circles and such, we know about potential treaties with governments and certain presidents at certain times with extraterrestrials. I think we tend to think of grays when most people do. I mean, I do. That's kind of where my brain goes. So I try to be open minded, and of course, I'll ask a question. But yeah, my brain goes to treaties with Grays and Eisenhower and Truman, but it certainly doesn't go to the '60s and frog beings. So that yeah, absolutely is certainly very interesting information.
Take, because ultimately when I was talking about I didn't even bring them up. They were brought up by these military US people, and they seem to be in very very close. There is some exchange and certain programs where ET species and ET intelligences directly either are being commissioned or volunteer to negotiate or help certain groups on this planet. And you mentioned the grays, that's clearly one of the species that made contact um, very early on, with mostly all, you know,
Seems like
you know,
military.
military groups on the planet, not only the US, not only Europe, including, certain other countries around the world as well, and also distributing some of the technology that is now kept behind closed doors too. Um, but ultimately, and the crash in Roswell, it's kind of funny because you know what today is? This is the
It's the
yeah, it's
anniversary.
the International UFO Day, and actually
UFO day,
the
baby.
day where the crash in Corona, New Mexico. It's actually called the Corona crash in
Right. Yeah,
file.
everybody says Roswell, but it was technically
Yeah, yeah,
Corona.
yeah. It's in the district of Roswell or anything. So it was today. And guess what? If you
Um,
go back, if this was 1947 right now, just a few weeks from now, the CIA would have been founded out of
informed.
nothing.
The
Why? Because
OSS.
people, the U.S. military was like, oh my goodness, what is that situation that we are looking at right now? We need an agency that takes care of only about this, of this. So that is where the CIA came from.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear someone like you say and explain so well because, of course, I've read and I know that there was the Office of Strategic Services and in the Army branch of the Air Force, which around that time were both kind of rapidly turned into the Air Force and into the CIA very quickly. And then we had, DOD, NSA, all sorts of other three-letter agencies pop up. And, of course, it was always under the guise of, and still is, under the guise of surveillance and, international surveillance and protection and intelligence gathering, etc. Which, of course, I mean, extraterrestrials would fall under intelligence gathering to me. I mean, that just makes sense. I mean, I often think that, like, human beings as a masses, I think, might actually be a little bit more ready for contact than we get credit for. Sometimes I think that, and then I'm like, I'll go to a concert or something, and I change my mind. I'm just joking, but I think a lot. I think even compared to especially like 1947 or in the 60s when Clifford Stone was looking at crashes before anybody was. I think I mean, at least now more than ever, the general public is a lot more willing to accept something like a true Star Trek or Star Wars type of existence, which you may or may not know to be true, but I suspect
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
a little more
I
what's going on.
Yeah. Well, it's a long history if you think about that, because and policies change. That is something that people really need to keep in mind, because some of these groups in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, these were people that were uh, you know um, deeply deeply influenced by all the chaos that was going on in the world just a few decades before that, and this is far away right now.
A lot of trauma,
Yeah,
collective trauma and
it is.
damage.
Yeah, that it actually is. I was trying to not say they were traumatized, but essentially they were. The whole generation, the whole generations before that were constantly traumatized by these incidents, by these and war and conflict is probably the most traumatizing, one of the most traumatizing events ever. So
Absolutely.
these are the beings and people that were in charge of certain programs, and nowadays we have a much, and that is why I'm more optimistic about these groups, because I do know that there are very, very smart people in these groups, and they've seen certain stuff and experienced certain stuff, and the more you experience something and the more you open yourself up for other influences, you learn and you evolve in certain ways. They're still included in a kind of a toxic environment, which is probably at one point they gotta evolve and bring that to like a more integrated form. That's for sure. But we're not talking about like the generation back then that was proposing, the fake alien invasion scenario, and
Right, the Mars
testing if
attacks
they
and
could
stuff like
scare
that.
the world. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good summary. And of course, you're somebody who's very uniquely qualified to speak on it, from where you're coming from. But of course, I'm curious. So yeah, you're speaking on, how these things happened. Obviously the Roswell crash. What was it, 1947? Is that correct? And right after World War II, our first use of an atomic weapon. We have that incident in Washington, D.C., over the White House, at 1953, something like that. Forgive me if I'm missing the date by a year or so, but you know what I mean? Just referencing some events. As far as, your experience in German covert operations, German military, and I know you've had contact, of course, and media collaboration happens everywhere. I think most people should know that it's 2024. We're a
I was just
globalized
about to say that, Tyler.
we're a
It's
globalized
2024.
society. If you think that the German military and the U.S. military are like separate entities that don't know who each other are, that's just insane. Like, come on. Like, of
Yeah.
course, there's collaboration. There's always got to be collaboration with anybody in power. Or in control of influence, whatever. And then that rolls us right into ETs, which most people don't even consider. But what I wanted to ask was, and, of course, you may or may not be able to speak on this, but the theory of, World War II ending with the A bomb, and that being the time of us making true contact with crashed ET vehicles, etc., in Roswell or the city next to it, etc. What's your opinion on, the take that World War II never really ended? That was kind of a propaganda scheme. Of course, that's something that's been said. I'm not saying that. Of course, it's something that's been said. I've read it. There's, documentaries arguing it such that the parties in power at the time had moved to, New Deutschland or New Schwabenland, what it's called, Antarctica, with special tech, etc. That was all part of a plan to, basically the world's a stage kind of thing. Is there anything that you could say on that, in the parties that were in power back then versus, the power? Obviously, you weren't involved with the German military during World War II, but did you ever hear anything about that? The transfer to Antarctica, the transfer of tech, etc.
Yeah, it's the thing. I mean, clearly the World War itself came to an end, because there's no weapon, there's no fighting, no conflict in that way
Right.
anymore.
In that
However,
sense, yes, of course.
yeah, but I mean, the world is still very much dealing with the issues and the trauma that has been, that was brought, was created through that time. So, and I think, I mean, we could very, very, very much structure that and go into the history and what actually happened. But just if you think about how crazy it is that this, first of all, this traumatizing event happened, this traumatizing conflict that had generations and generations of humans, that has influenced them on a very deep level. And then something else happened, which is basically, certain influences being brought to the US, for example. So when you mentioning the atomic bomb, it is very clear that Germany was the one who was looking into the nuclear bomb,
Of
and they were
course.
at that time, they were shipping lots and lots of stuff in certain submarines, U-boats, down south, and one of these submarines was actually captured. One of them. Many were not. Many were not. But
Of
one of them was
course.
captured, and the lieutenant who was in charge of that U-boat. He was very resistant in telling any one of these intelligence people what they actually wanted to do. So the first theory was, at that time, they wanted to ship that nuclear bomb over to Japan, because Japan was still fighting in 1945.
Right.
So that was the idea, and that was actually what brought Project Manhattan into play. People
Okay.
finally had their hands on. The Germans had all these facilities. They just couldn't make them operate because and I spoke to some people who were involved with that time, or at least from the military, the US military, and they were also saying like, hey, that was like running against time. They were bombing all these facilities where there was heavy water plants. There were always certain facilities where they were building all these V2 rockets that were essentially could be carriers of nuclear bomb. So they brought the material into what's that, New Mexico, I think it was,
New
right?
Mexico.
I think it
Okay.
was New Mexico. European here, so somewhere in that huge area,
Hey,
somewhere
that's
in the
pretty
desert.
good. Pretty good.
Yeah,
European
starting
geography,
the whole
American
Oppenheimer
geography.
stuff. But it's a crazy thing, because when you're saying it has never stopped, there is lots and lots of issues that come from that time, because ultimately lots of these influences from the Third Reich were going into different um, parts of the world. We do still have very strong communities in South America with
Yeah,
thousands of people. But even more dramatically is what happened to the US, because they integrated Operation Paperclip.
on
People know
paperclip.
about that. It's open source right now after so
I
many
mean,
years. But they
NASA, Werner
integrated
von Braun. Yeah.
they integrated lots of these German scientists, but not only the German scientists. I mean, German scientists. That sounds like, okay, that's a good deal. But they also integrated lots of the intelligence members who were highly, military decorated
Idealized.
people. Yeah,
They had an
right.
ideology.
Very, very much so. And third
I
of
heard
all, they
someone
also
quote once
integrated.
that like these people didn't just stop having well,
No, no, no,
they
no.
didn't just stop being,
Yeah, yeah. I
like
mean,
loyal
they
to the
they
party.
started lots of these German psychologists and governance people too, people that were doing the same stuff that I used to do, but they went into the US, and they brought their ideas of like the German psychology of that time was very Freudian based. So the idea is that you could control the minds of people through that psychology that they were, and this is actually what then led into MK Ultra, which is again something that is also on the record. People know
All
about
about
that very
mind
much.
control.
Yeah, that's if you look into these things, you will find lots and lots and lots of very German names, all with Mexican
Yeah,
passports, but
right.
but very
We're on the
German
same
names.
page. We're definitely on the same page with
Yeah.
that.
So the downfall of the U.S. society that is kind of very apparent right now in actually everywhere where you look in the US. It's very apparent. This is something that
You said
comes
it.
from a very bad integration of wrong ideas. And I think that started a certain type of sellout to to American people, to their own human resources, if you want to say it that way,
Right, their
right?
own
Yeah, it's
internal
the own
department that
population.
had its
Uh,
own
yeah,
agenda.
and that is something that is that needs to be corrected right now. Otherwise, the state it's or the state of the nation is actually threatened very much.
Yeah, and I myself, I mean, I was never in the military. I never had anything against it or anything like that. Actually, a lot of my family members were in the military. They served, American military, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, all the way up through recent. times, it was just never something I was personally drawn to. But
Well, that's
I've
a good
always
thing, Tyler, by the way.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm glad that I never was. I mean, sometimes I think, I wonder what I would have learned, or
What's that?
not learned, but confirmed.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't know. I mean, clearly, I'm being, I have a different cultural background because what happened in Germany and the lessons that at least two German generations, three German generations or so, they what they took away from that incident was actually for quite some decades something where people were looking into and saying like, okay, we need to learn from these mistakes, and we need to put our civilization onto a much more peaceful foundation. And that is something for example, I went to law school, so I studied German law and the constitution and so on. And the constitution in Germany is clearly, from the comparison to every other country, it's very new. It just happened in the 1950 or
right?
1940,
That's relatively new. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
But it's also it's actually quite a good constitution. However, in the last few years now, we're observing that the the generation and what's happening right now is like more yeah,
It's
I
starting to
wish they would.
resemble what was of
Yeah,
the
I
past a
wish
little
they
bit.
would. But I mean, same thing. Oh, there you are. Same thing with the founding fathers of the U.S. If you look into what they set up and their ideas and pursuit of happiness, a concept that I very much resonate with. So
Of
they
course,
had ideas, and they were trying to learn from what's going on in Europe at that time, with the French and different
absolutely.
other groups, and try to bring all these ideas into a better concept in the so-called New World. But is that still the foundation on which America, or the United States, are built upon? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I agree with you. Yeah, I would agree with you. Absolutely. And yeah, we seem to have gotten off track a little bit in some way. It's hard to say
I don't
exactly
think so.
how.
I think we just we did a good job, I think.
Or yeah, I mean, things are written, things happen as they should. I mean, it, I guess you could argue it's all a result of choices, all a result of a plan, and most people don't consider that there are other forces at work besides just ourselves. I mean, I only in the past few years have really started to see proof and have understanding of the fact that my consciousness can influence my thoughts, and not just in a manner of having a positive mindset yields positive results more times than not, but in the sense of quantum physics, and in the sense of literally creating reality and manifesting reality. I've really truly come to understand that in a profound way. My other understanding of it is, of course, that there's things that I can't consciously manifest and change because, for example, let's take the passing of time. That's something that we use as humans to just govern our lives, to kind of, so we can meet at the same time on the computer and make it places on time and everything. And I've used that as an example. Like, the passing of time example is kind of could be argued as an idea that is just a collective consciousness idea something that's so ingrained in every human that it's not something that one person is ever going to change. So we all agree in the passage of time. And of course, there's relativity and things like that, but there are those certain universal, quote unquote, truths that seem to be universal truths and laws. But to me, I've started to think of them as, they just become so universally accepted that there's no way to change that via observer effect unless there's some sort of critical mass change. And of course, that leads you down a bunch of other rabbit holes and think, wait, what if that was like with everything, with suppressed tech, with benevolent ETs controlling things, with bad actors within the governments who have relationships with ETs and things like that. And I guess your expertise is with the Greys, but I just, July 2nd, 2024.
Yeah,
Which
I
extraterrestrial
think that
race?
is like a very relevant point that you just made, because if you look into quantum science and the advanced projects that I was working on, we were looking into that very much. So every one of us has these different types of fields around us. It's these toroidal fields and these different overmapping fields that every one of us has. We have electromagnetic fields. We do have, you know, all types of these things. One of them is a reality field. So each one of us lives in his or her own reality bubble.
Like a
And
little
there are
universe.
bubbles that are overlapping each other. So what you're describing, that you can change your reality, yes, we as observers, we are directly connected to the stream of reality, and we can change, modulate, transform the stream of reality, especially when we learn these techniques. And I'm very keen on teaching that to people, and very much, and that is the reason why we do this big All Shift Happening Now conference in October, is there when you bring people together, when you bring them together, then these overlapping reality fields create a cohesive, bigger field. And again, I hope to see you in October too, Tyler. I think I know we talked about that, but
Yeah.
when we integrate that, when we have more people and we bring these overlapping cohesive fields, they just form this new field. And this new field can have new rules,
It's a
can have physical, and just take that in, real physical applications, because these reality fields are overlaying. There is something in the universe which is a routing of what we call mental gravitational field. So the mental gravitational field is the architecture that actually creates all the rules and all the things that we all agree upon. So there is actually, it is much more likely that we would actually fall through the floor that we're standing upon, because if you really zoom into that, there is much more space available than there are particles. So
of course, yeah,
that is that is
99.99%
just
space.
the reality. That's the way the universe is structured, in that
It's the facts.
this version of the universe. However, no one of we can all rest assured that we are very, very safe, that we can walk upon these, and then we
Right.
stand
We
there
trust
and
it.
we have the strong stance. So that is mental gravitation. That means that enough of these observers are not questioning, but very firmly believing in the architecture of the reality field that we all collectively perceive. If there's only one of these people, especially if that person is, he or she is not trained enough, and just one person might not be able to detach himself or herself from that collective field. If they would, they would not share the same space. Just take that in. They would not share the same space with every other human. So there are beings that have changed their reality fields, but they do not appear here anymore. And now you might think
Hear
about what
about it.
happened with all these civilizations 15,000 years ago that built these pyramids, that built 80 million houses. We've excavated 80 million houses, not me, but other people, 80
You're
million
right.
in South America. Where they all gone? We didn't find any traces of like bodies or anything. They just vanished. They just vanished. So that is the way how ETs, for example, zoom in and zoom out from the shared reality field that we all experience, because they do know these rules. But at certain points, either randomly or because there's a person that shows the probability effects, these worlds, these veils, these bubbles can overlap. The veil is very thin, and then transition can happen. And we've chosen a spot in Germany to make this beautiful conference happen in October, where the veil of reality is naturally extremely thin, extremely thin. It is
Thin
actually
already.
the same spot in Germany that in the 1940s was used in order to open these portals. That is how far back, and the realm was chosen for that very reason. So what we are doing is actually, and that is so important, that you guys we all come together, And we're
Yeah.
not doing a live stream. I can't emphasize how many times I've been asked that question, like, hey, can we do a live stream? Well, we want to emphasize that we all come together because you have your reality bubble. Tyler has
Right.
his reality bubble, but you are sitting there in Florida. I'm sitting here in the middle of 3,000 miles away. So
Yeah, of course.
there is no physical overlapping. The only overlapping of reality that we currently have is through the technology or the AI consciousness, or however you want to call that. But when we all come together physically, our physical bubbles, reality bubbles, overlap, and we create new rules for our reality. We detach ourselves and we create a cohesive reality field. And now we can design things. Now we can change some of the paradigms.
So that's really, I mean, sounds like to me the idea of, a collective consciousness and a tipping point of sorts, a critical mass of sorts, where at a certain point, things can happen, the rules can change, etc. And that's really refreshing to hear from anyone, really. But that's just really refreshing to hear confirmed as a belief, because that's what I hope. That's what I hope to see, is that humanity as a whole, Homo sapiens sapien, that we find what we're seeking for. That seeking for who the heck are we? And I suspect that's being hidden from most of us, and we just want to know the answer. And I think we're close to being ready, and I'd love to see that question be answered and handled with grace, and
Yeah, but
see
I mean, it's
society
far
upgrade.
more than that, because ultimately, no one in the universe wants to be in a miserable place. No
Of
one. We
course.
want to. That is the ultimate reason why we even exist, is because at one point we were this designer of the universe, and we were saying like, hey, we want to have companionship. We want to have communication, and we want to find a stabilized home, a home where we can live in, where we can create, where we can experience ourselves. And now we've dealt far too long with that situation where duality, where people were scared by their own mirrors looking into each other, and that needs to be overcome. We need to come out of that lose situation that the Earth experienced. I'm not talking about the planet herself. I'm talking about the experience, the systematic experience
The,
that's been set
the
up.
Earth
So
School, so to
when
speak.
people look into these freaking politics and all that kind of crap, I'm sorry, I actually worked in that field far too long, so excuse my
Yeah, I think you're
frustration.
fine
But when
to
people
say
look
that.
into that and think like, oh, these are the two choices that they have, no, that's not true. That's not true, and that's not even including RFJ. It's
Right.
telling you, as the observer of your reality, you have the freaking
Choice.
the full universe of decisions to make and to create. If you don't do it, it's gonna just flow down the river, and others might take decisions for you. So I
Right.
really encourage everyone to come together with us, and let's find new paradigms. Let's emphasize the power of the mass, and multiplicate that, and bring new paradigms and new laws and new structures into our reality that guarantee that we have the foundation for a holistic society. We want to grow in a good soil, because then we can grow a society that sparks the joy of life inside of us. I can't tell you how many times I got frustrated around the Earth experience and said, like, my goodness, this is not how it's meant to be. I wouldn't. This is a motivating thought, for me. I'd love to be retired, and I'd love to paint just oil paintings, and be surrounded with friends and stuff. And here
Right.
I am, working for us and setting up this stuff, because I really do want a planetary home base. I want a home base where we can actually grow and where we can evolve together, all together.
Exactly. It sounds cliche, but I mean, cliches are cliches for a reason. We're all in it together. High tides, all boats rise. all shift happily now. I mean, yeah, that's what it's all about. We don't
Yeah.
want the select few to say there's something holding you, and I feel the same way from just giving up and having a life of leisure that that pulls us to want to help others, that pulls us to want to do things that are altruistic, etc., that might be valuable spiritual experiences for others, and in your own case sharing your actual real world experiences,
Yeah.
both in the real world realm of like geopolitics and what I would say most people still are not 100% aware of is
It's growing.
geopolitical
It's
and
growing very much. I just saw like this
extraterrestrial
interview
relation.
where
Yeah,
what's his name, Jake Paul or something. He was asking Donald Trump, and Trump was saying, yeah, it's real. He was
that's
saying.
true.
So people talk about these things, but I think it's a very clever move what the certain ET intelligences have done for like the last 70 years by just showing themselves to the least integrated and most problematic groups on the planet, which typically are the certain military forces, because they are designed to be destructive. That's
They're
the ultimate
operating at a
design
low
of,
frequency. Yeah,
that's just reality. So by showing up to them, that means they are being introduced into new realities. And there's one factor that you will see in history that has changed every society, always. And it's very deeply rooted in the genetics of what humans are. It's when a human looks into a different situation of someone else and they see how beautiful they have it, they want that very much, very much. Whenever that happened, look into Cuba, look into the Cold War situation or whatever. Whenever there was like looking across how green the grass might be on the other side. And we're
yeah.
not
The
talking
grass is
about an
greener.
illusion, because apparently lots of, we have a globalized situation, a globalized world. Lots of immigrants that go into America, for example, they hope to find like the given land, or like the holy grail of countries,
A,
which
a
it's
land of
not. It's
opportunity,
definitely
but
not, and you won't
not
find that
anymore. Yeah.
on the planet, because the globalized situation as such, it's the laws and the way it's been set up is just, it doesn't make it possible. However, there are other worlds outside, and let's even focus on other humans. There are other human civilizations outside of planet Earth. I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anyone, but if you look around, humans did not originate on this planet.
They
That
don't
might
all look the
be the
same.
reason why people need a a coat, in wintertime, and your dog might not. So that is the reason why there are other human civilizations, and some of them have evolved, and they still have unresolved issues, but they have set up systems and decided for the right mindset that we need to focus on the specialties and the motivation and what each and every individual being on this planet can contribute to our growth as a collective species, as a collective consciousness.
I love
Everyone
that.
has talents. Einstein said, you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a freaking
Everyone's a
tree.
genius, but
That
if
is
you
very
judge a fish,
true.
yeah.
That is very
Mhm.
true. But if all the systems that are in place on planet Earth try to narrow it down to like, I don't know, 50 drawers, and then they try to fit 8 billion people into 50 drawers and say like, hey,
Right.
you got to fit in that somehow.
If you don't, then you're crazy.
Yeah, it's not revealing the true potential and beauty and spark of life that I've seen in so many humans whenever when they are in the zone of enjoying life and doing something for hours and hours and hours, doing incredible things. And that needs to be changed. So something that I'm extremely motivated is creating these rooting foundations for people, so that they can shift happily, and happiness, again, that can be anything. Happiness is very much, very, very
Very
much a
subjective.
personalized thing. But we want people to at least have the chances, the opportunities to grow their happiness, because individuals growing happiness means we are collectively growing happiness.
Very, very well said. I often say the same thing, yeah, along the same lines, that it's like, it just one person at a time. People are at different levels. More and more people that join into that quote unquote collective. And, I believe that every human soul, and maybe more, I don't know, but human souls, I think that we're a part of a collective. I think there are those that just don't know it and maybe don't think about it very often. I know I never, but there was a time where I never thought about what are my thoughts conscious? What are my conscious thoughts, consequences to the collective? It wasn't something I thought about. Now I do kind of think of things like that. Now that might sound a little weird to some people, but to me, that's really just saying, like, what's the what's the right thing to do? What's the best way to be to achieve the net result that we all want? It's quite simple.
The
Yeah.
consciousness alone, right? It can be the reason why we do have so many people on this planet who care and integrate some of these truths, and they clearly learn all these things, learn them and integrate them into your life, and then create your own life in the most happy fashion and way possible, because you ultimately holding a space. We are holding individual happy realities that we can open up, that we can share, and that we can multiply through that. So just two funny examples. When I was in Colorado, and Colorado has been developed into that project marijuana state of the US,
Yeah.
which is, it's
It's
super
kind of,
funny to observe that. And they have
I
integrated,
imagine, especially as it's
well, they
grown
did a
into.
great job to integrate cannabis, because what I've seen in Colorado is, ever since that cannabis industry grew, the whole state also blossomed in many, many ways. People are much more into their spiritual behavior. They connected more with nature, and created very interesting industries around that. So when
Yeah.
I came back from that, I felt that vibration still on me. I felt like I was like almost like a tea bag who was like dropped into that water and then brought back to Europe. And I could feel for 2 weeks, when I was back in Germany, I could feel myself vibrate. And I said to someone at that time, I said, I have a feeling, I think we just brought back this idea of how to integrate cannabis, and we just brought that back to Germany. And it was a weird idea, but I very firmly believed that in that very moment. And I said, like, I think 1 year from now, I think Germany is going to legalize marijuana. And guess what? 1 year from that moment, Germany became the very first country now that
In the EU.
fully liberated recreational marijuana. And Germany is the most overregulated and most square nation on this planet. I made the
Yeah.
German I went through the German experience. I know it's true. It's very true. And now there
Yeah,
are
I
all
wouldn't
these
have thought
people
that.
opening up their minds with cannabis. Me, as someone who's like in the field of governance, I'm always looking into social structures. I'm very interested in that. I
Of
want to
course.
see what's happening with Germany now that they liberated cannabis. I want to see if they, dive into new types of music, new types of consciousness, new types of connecting with people,
Yeah, absolutely.
celebrating life, being more relaxed. I want to see that. That plant, for example, is a very, very sacred plant,
I
and it,
happen to agree.
changed a lot. Think
In
about
a,
the
s-
70s.
in a
Think about the
sacred
peace
way.
movement.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've of course had my experiences with it, and I've actually had I had a recent guest he's a cannabis coach. He actually works with a lot of people. I mean, it's not just celebrities and stuff, but he works with a lot of people, basically helping them develop a better relationship with plant medicine, but generally the cannabis plant. I mean, he's really carved out his niche as that. And, it's funny because one of the first things he does is you stop. Like, you stop for a while because it's not, his idea is that you don't want to be dependent on anything. Being dependent on anything like that is not usually ever a good thing. And then, his whole, it's for example of new arts, new ideas coming out of something that never would have been something I ever would have thought of or heard of, but somebody that's providing value by teaching somebody how to, and offering true valuable advice on how to have a better relationship with something that could be used or potentially misused or even abused, but something that we seemingly have had no problem using safely for, like you said, tens of thousands of years.
Yeah. And it's very
I-
likely that this is a plant that comes from outside Earth too, because
I've
we
heard
do have
serious.
we found like lots and lots of evidence that thousands of years ago, when humanity was much more open for contact, that certain species came here on their in their little ships, and well, they brought their own plants. Why wouldn't they? If they enjoy that, if
Yeah,
they,
that's it.
the plant itself is super diverse too, so it can be utilized for robes, it can be utilized as food, it can be, it's a super
Bricks
plant in such
building.
an amazing way. So we got all these evidences that someone from outside brought cannabis into the planet. And now, if you think about that, cannabis can very much enhance your relationship with the world, very much make it like a very intimate and beautiful connection. Like
Absolutely.
lots of the music, lots of the the food, very social plant too. So it's nothing that
Absolutely.
it sparks like the joy of
Conversation,
communicating and doing
creativity.
certain stuff with people in various ways. And we also know from all the deep research that has been conducted over the last few years that cannabis is very much able and capable of bringing you spiritual, uh, you know, entheogenic experiences. So connecting yourself with the reality field in new ways, but also it's capable of all this psychedelic effects in a, if people know how to use it in just a very low risk, or like
Low
a very
doses.
well integrated form. So people do not have to take in LSD, which was like a, a
Right.
game changer in the 70s for the peace movement and so on. Actually, we also we looked into the LSD situation in the programs, and it's kind of an interesting fact because one of the species that we've contacted or had contact with, we were asking them, hey, was there any very famous incident where where they were like interfering with humanity? And they were saying, yeah, the LSD. We sent you the LSD, literally. And we were actually aiming that towards Germany because we were seeing that there's going to be either a huge blossoming moment in World War II, like
Could
1930s,
could have
could
went
have
one
been
way or
like
the other.
the whole time between 1900 to 1930 was a very revolutionary time. So it could have been a
Could have been
time
different.
where, if there wasn't like these two dramatic and traumatizing events and all the bitterness and all that kind of stuff, that the karma that was created, but if that would have been transferred or brought into a different direction, that could have been a very transformative time. So what they
Yeah.
thought was like, hey, if we drop the LSD into Germany at the right time with the right right mindset, then people are gonna delve into this field of awareness, the ocean of consciousness that LSD is actually bringing into people, that is deeply connecting people with the world around them. We do know from nowadays science that people that take LSD very immediately heal from all types of addictions. Why do they do that? Because they ultimately get back their connection with source. They get back their connection with this beautiful ocean of awareness. So
Absolutely.
they send it into the middle of, Europe, but you know how random things sometimes happen. So Hofmann, who actually found that LSD at the right time, he just put it away for 20 years or something, and came back to it later.
Got busy with the war, I guess, and then
Yeah,
came back
and
to it.
that was already, and it was Switzerland, so it was not completely in Germany. But if that plan, and then it's kind of funny how things go, right? The LSD found a place where it's deeply needed, so it basically swapped over to the US. So in the US, it
Yeah,
was huge in the 70s, but it was 30 years too late, and it was the wrong continent. However, in my opinion, as someone who looks into governance and social structures and systems and all of that, it is the only revolution, the love revolution, the peace revolution, the green revolution. This is the only revolution that has ever been successful on this planet, because it's still ongoing.
yeah, it's never stopped. Just
It's
I've met
growing.
people
Yeah, very
I've met
much.
the people from that generation who are now they're older, but they very much still embody the lifestyle, and the ideas are the same, and their children, their grandchildren, their just the communities in general. I mean, those things have lived on. I always try to remember myself, to use discernment and to try to remind others as well that, I mean, history and the things that you're reading and the way things are labeled, they're manufactured. And, we hear about the hippie movement and the free love movement of the 60s, but that kind of implies that it ended in the 60s. And no, that's not necessarily true. It's just maybe, yeah, that's not what they're calling it
No,
anymore, whoever
yeah.
they are.
Yeah, it did not. I know that, people at that time were saying, flower power is dead. That was like some of the disappointments that they felt. Why? Because they, the way it was very radical in the way that it's been set up. And of course, we had like the strong counter movement, Nixon at that time and so on, who were
War
looking
on
into that and
drugs.
trying to, everyone who's taken a big, that's not true, because at that time, what also happened, just because of that generation, you guys wouldn't have yoga. We as people, we wouldn't not have yoga, meditation, or anything like that, if not at that time the whole movement opened up for something. They opened up and brought these meditative techniques and everything like that, looking into consciousness, talking about consciousness, talking about the universe, and all of that stuff that happened in that revolution, that revolution of consciousness. And very much, I again, I could debate that all day long. I could,
Yeah,
but
for
I'm
sure.
very much convinced that this is the only incident, the only revolution ever on this planet that was successful and will grow being successful, because there's so much involved with that. Includes meditation, which nowadays everyone has heard about meditation.
Right.
So many millions and millions and millions of people around the globe are doing meditation, with or without other plants and entheogens or anything like that. But
Right.
humanity at that time really delved into exploring consciousness, and this is something that is ongoing, and this is something that will ultimately lead us back to a path of stabilization, and then
And
holistic societies. And that is
it's
something that we currently are emphasizing and promoting
yeah,
here too.
it's the path we're on now. It's that's what you're doing with All Shift Happily Now. Wow, of course, since we rolled into that and you talked a little bit about the uh, LSD being meant for Germany, and some of this earlier you had mentioned some of the the special properties of that area in Germany, and that being why people had chosen that area, German officials and such, to do certain things, psychic things, etc. Back during the 30s and 40s. So during the All Shift Happily Now conference, which, by the way, guys, if you haven't gathered yet or seen a post by either of us or anything, the All Shift Happily Now conference is in October. It's in Germany. It's a 6-day event, or 7-day event. It's Tim Tactics here. Sarah Breskman Cosme, she was on the show last week. Kedrick Olson and Sarah Zula, and it's basic. It says it on the website, but I actually thought this myself even before I read it. It's kind of a spiritual theme park, so to speak. It's at a 10,000-year-old ashram in the forest in Germany. Is that correct?
Yeah, we actually partnered up with the biggest yoga ashram outside of India, and it's
cool.
not a coincidence that they actually situated themselves at that spot. I don't think they consciously made that choice. I don't know, but apparently they are doing pujas, which are clearing ceremonies for like 25 years at that spot. And Germany right now and Central Europe especially is on the verge of becoming something new. There is again this potential of moving something into the right direction. And I want to emphasize that, and the responsibility that each one of us have. We all have this responsibility, but also this honor that when we come together, that we can influence the potential of what happens. So just think about that. And it might sound a little over dramatized, but just think about what could have happened if people in the 1900s were as aware as we are currently, and could have influenced certain outcomes in world history that would have charged and brought in a completely new situation in the world, not only for you but also for your children, for your friends, for your family, your mom, your dad, everyone, and for your ongoing life on this planet in this experience too.
Timeline
that is something
like
that
this.
we really need to emphasize.
Yeah, butterfly effect. I mean, I think, of course, with timelines and things like that, it's kind of like, a cone that opens. The further you go down, further you go out in time, the likelihood of the timeline being the same that you're sitting in right here in this very moment are less and less likely, because there's just more probability for change and more thoughts and intents and just anything else you could possibly think of going on.
It's a fantastic conference. The only thing that I'm currently trying to to communicate is how much stuff we're actually packing into these 6 days. That is something
that's great.
yeah, because that is ultimately I want this experience to be as beautiful and charging and giving back for each and every one. So there's something for everyone in that conference. And we started this community action where I asked people, hey, what does you get excited about what is it that gets you excited about the conference? And we figured that there are so many different interests, and I think that is very, very special. It's also about the coming together, the community effect, because ultimately, and that has always been my plan from the very moment when I suggested all shift happily now, which is the least effort that people can do, and the least responsibility is at least sit on your bed before bedtime. Take freaking 2 minutes. That's all it takes. You don't have to create a new party or anything. Just focus your awareness, all shift happily now, and focus on this cohesive field and create that with millions of people in different worlds everywhere, and we all do that together and shift the planet. But now we take it to the next level. Now we all come together, but I want this to be fun. I want this to be pleasurable. I want this to be inspiring. I want to bring knowledge to people, but I also want to bring real events. So the whole thing, and I think that is the best description of it, it is a spiritual theme park, but it's even more. It's also a responsibility and an honor for all of us to structure the outcome of what is happening on this planet that you are actually living in currently. It's not that you can detach yourself from it. There are some billionaires who can afford, a rocket outside of the
Right.
planet, but ultimately we're all in here. We're all in this
Most
together.
of us are
No
in this
pun
together.
intended, Jane.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I guess that is true, Tim, you mentioned earlier. And just, to remind everybody, what we're talking about at the moment is the All Shift Happily Now conference, which, began a couple of years ago as a mass meditation movement. I know you guys do some other things and, internet events and things like that, but I think it was generally a mass meditation movement at the beginning. And I mean, you guys had 20,000 people on there at once when that stuff first started, and people came and went. I think I remember that was kind of right around the time I had met my producer, Gene, and she told me about it and everything then. But, that feels like forever ago. Time flies, but it's amazing to see where you guys are at now. And just the way you guys have put together the team and everything like that, as far as, who's going to be there. And you said you want to bring as much to the experience as possible. You guys have kind of assembled a little all-star team for that. I mean, yourself, just a great host. It's your home country, so of course, there's a connection there. You've got some history and some guidance and some insight to offer that others may not. Sarah's going to be doing some like live hypnosis type stuff. Is that correct? Which is absolutely incredible. Actually, Sarah's books sit on my backdrop. I
I've
admire
actually
her.
never
She's
met her in
absolutely
person. There's a person in our group, and I think we have a fantastic team together. And we're doing that only for about 600 days. But I think we have like a fantastic core group of people with very distinctive and very masterful skills, and also I friends. They're like super.
good
Became
chemistry.
so much, such a group of friends to me too. But it's we got this shadow worker, which is Kadich Olsen with a long beard. It's super cool to have him because he knows
Hope to have him on the show soon.
yeah,
One of you guys that hasn't come on
that's
yet.
cool.
So,
So he's taking care of all the shadowy stuff that we have a safe transition. He takes care, and he spent his life into looking into the shadows of the universe, and
the
we do know that
supernatural and
this is
things,
part
right?
of it.
Paranormal.
It's just something that happens in duality, that these things need to be integrated. We do have Sarah Zula, and she's a masterful healer in her own rights. We got and that is very needed, because ultimately over the Earth experience has left its impact on everyone. It would be disillusional to say it's not the case. It is the case. We need some type of washing. We do have Sarah Brexman Cosme, who you just mentioned, and she's a masterful hypnotist. And hypnosis can bring you in a very gentle way into a different consciousness perception. Hypnosis can open you up for certain, your higher self, your higher perception and higher wisdom very effectively. I'm very grateful that I can contribute to that with all the wisdom that I've collected and all the experience that I've collected, but also with this, with my formal training of, steering and leading, societal parts. So what we're doing is something that we are actually creating a new basis for a new soil for this plant of ours to grow, so that we can all become and be happy. Something that the pursuit of happiness, that is just something that we reactivate here, and I'm super happy about that. And then we have this expanded circle of All Shift happening now, of all these friends and fantastic speakers and podcasters like you, and People like Jeff Mara, or people like Ishmael Perez, or like Debbie Solaris, who basically, by the way, might also join us in that conference too. So a two
She's
times
been on the
Emmy
show as well.
Award-winning
Yeah.
producer. He's phenomenal in his own rights. And we got all these people, and then we have this huge and beautiful community, which I count everyone in. And whenever I see people come together and they visit each other and become friends for this lifetime and beyond, whenever that happens, it sparks my heart, because I see the universe as puzzle pieces and bringing these puzzle pieces together. And whenever I can, put some of these puzzle pieces together, and I know it's a big
Feels
puzzle
good.
that we're going to do here, so I need some support of all of you here so we can do that all together. But
Yeah,
whenever I see that,
absolutely.
whenever I see people being more integrated with their reality, more happy, we have so many people that said, like, guys, this helped me so much. It helped me in my reality. It changed my life positively. And also people who said, like, I met so many friends here. Whenever that happens, I feel a moment of deep rewarding too.
And that's awesome. And I just want to say, for anybody who's watching this, and this will be up and we'll have clips, the links to this event, anything you want to see about it, everybody involved in it. And I'll also go ahead and throw, like I said, 3 out of the 4 presenters there have been on this show very recently. So I'll link those bios, I'll link those episodes to the description of this video. But more importantly, I'm going to link the All Shift Happily Now ticket website and event calendar. And also, if there's I'll type this in the bio, but if you use the word immersive, all lowercase letters, there's a bit of a discount. The price is in euros, I believe, but it's something like $100 or something like
that's
that.
a massive discount of, I think,
conversion rate, but still,
100 euro.
that's
Yeah.
it's a nice savings. Absolutely. Very good chance I will personally be there. I'm not presenting or anything. It's just, something.
We're going to do some of the social media clips, which I'm very excited about. So I think that's
naturally
cool.
I'll work a little bit in my own way, shape, and form. But yeah, I'm just happy.
Yeah,
to
like live
participate.
podcasts and live interviews. That's going to be very, very cool, Tyler. I do appreciate that very much. And
I think that would be really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a super cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because ultimately, we do only have so many tickets. So once the conference hall is filled up, then we can't, sell any more tickets. But we do have like thousands of people that still want to be with us. So when we do these clips, and when we do some of the social media documentation, that is at least bringing the core hearts of these people together too. The effect when we're there in the right spot at the right time with the right people, exactly doing that, that is so freaking strong.
So powerful.
Just expect your life to change in a different direction, much better, after you met all these people. When you readjusted your energy field, your reality field, when you come back with all this wisdom and the practical stuff that we're going to do. We're going to do a ritual together in order to directly influence the reality field. So it's very clearly important that you're all part of that. It's super important. You don't want to miss the
you don't want to miss one-of-a-kind things. You don't want to miss temporarily open portals. You don't want to miss one-of-a-kind events.
That's a freaking good expression, Tyler. That makes so much sense. Yeah. If you have the lifetime's chance to go through a portal that is being offered to you, don't sit at home and
watch it. Think about it.
Go freaking go.
Yeah. So a couple questions I've heard you say. And by the way, guys, so the All Shift Happily Now conference is actually, I'm pretty involved in the quote unquote spiritual community, and there's events all over the place. But as far as value goes, time, just value, general, who's going to be there, what the itinerary is, absolutely incredible value for what you get. Of course, check out the website for pricing. I don't want to be the guy doing currency conversions on live stream, but it's a very reasonable price. It's an event where it's like, again, I said it's a whole week in a very beautiful spot. This isn't a 2 day event. It's almost a week.
It's almost
Six
6 days,
6 days.
and it includes the stay too. That's
It
and
includes
the
the
food.
stay.
So
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I saw the
So
food and water and tea and like that's a lot of events do not include that kind of stuff.
yeah,
That's
it's
not
crazy.
always the case. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
really genuinely like if you're ever looking for something like that to do, I highly encourage it. And I've heard you say, I know Kedrick's going to be doing some seances and things like that. He's pretty tapped into uh, the other side of the veil, the paranormal, some may say. That,
Yeah.
and I've actually had people ask me this, is that something that anybody should be afraid of? Is that something that he has under control? What kind of spirits is Kedrick looking to contact in the forest there in Germany?
That's a good question. We do get these questions, and I want to be very, very responsible in my answer here, because we take care that we offer a container for everyone where uh, the integration is made as easy and possible and comfortable for everyone as possible, because ultimately the effect that you are going to merge with other dimensions, other realities, other spirits, that is inevitable. It is going to happen. So now you have a choice to make. You either let it happen and let cultural indoctrination and randomness take place, and you might end up with a good experience. You might also end up with an experience that is shaped by the collective, which unfortunately has done a terrible job in order
Yeah,
to open up
an individual
worlds.
experience, an
Yeah, it
open
just is. You
individual
know how many
experience.
horror movies there are outside, and you can see people would not ask the question like, "Oh my goodness, what is going to happen?" if they were not subliminally
Programmed by
influenced
that.
by, yeah, primed by what is going to
Movies,
happen. By I mean
poltergeists
by
and
the
stuff.
social
Yeah.
indoctrination. That is just the case. So you can ask yourself, do you want that part of the reality speak through you? Because at one point it is inevitable for your life that you cross these borders. It is going to happen. That is 100% sure. In the very moment when you're born onto this planet, you are going to cross that border at one point or another. It is 100% sure. So now it's the question, do you want all these fear and all this subliminal fear, create your experience? Or do you want these experts that have done that many, many times, or spent their whole life in doing these things, and
Right.
create a container for you? And so you can go into these experiences and have them as holistic, as wholesome, and beautiful as possible, because that is the true reality.
And
So when we're
hold
talking
your
about the
hand and
seance and
guide you
contacting,
along. Yeah.
yeah, when we're contacting other beings, and people ask me like, "Hey, isn't that dangerous or anything?" Well, if you
Could
just
be wrong
join,
people.
yeah, I brought this the other day in another interview. I brought this example. If you go to certain web services that offer you a chat opportunity where your webcam is just randomly connected to another webcam, well, chances are pretty high that you you end up in a
Something might
situation that,
happen.
yeah,
Right.
that might be a little traumatizing, I guess. But
Discernment.
if you use your webcam in order to connect yourself with uh, beautiful souls, with nice souls, and have fantastic moments, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll say it, my partner and I we're in a separation right now, but she's one of those people who always walks up and puts a post-it on the webcam, or like I use a little bit nicer of a cam and it has a cover, and if I don't shut it, we're just taking some time we're living apart right at the moment. We're doing separate things. So my life partner and I are not living together right now, but yeah, I'm used to having things done like the second I move away from my computer, boom, shut the camera down kind of thing. And I think about stuff like that too, but she was just always on top of that, like, really, really about like, nah, those cameras need to be off. That phone can't be listening. No Alexa's in the house, all that stuff. And I
Well,
used to be
yeah.
that way too, paranoid of the government. But then I started doing like CE5s and things like that, and they started to work. And I'm like, if somebody's listening, they're listening.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to spoil that for everyone, but the universe is open source. That is just because it's just one life form. We are just one
It's consciousness.
universal being. How would you hide something away from yourself, from ourselves? That's just not possible. The only thing that you can do is restructure and rearrange things, and that is where we are experts. That is where we can contribute and offer you a service and say like, okay, if you might not want to, jump into the unknown, well, we can create for you an experience, and that's why I call it a theme park, because you're
It's
set
an
safely
experience.
into that seat. You get a nice, and you get the perfect experience for yourself. So if you like, I'm when I go to theme parks, I do
I'm
very
like
much
super
enjoy
looking forward
the
to it.
slow rides. I do like the nice design. I like when there's good music. I like when these types of adventures. I very
Yeah,
much like that. I'm
leaning
not
into
not
the
a person who.
experience.
Yeah, I mean, but there are some people out there who also likes the crazy stuff. That is okay too. However, you might not want to I don't know, you don't want to jump from a bridge without a bungee
Without a
jumping
bungee.
rope. You know,
Yeah,
you want to at least have some professionals take care that it's all good.
you want a good.
Even
Yeah,
that, you don't jump
absolutely.
from a bridge and have no parachute or anything like that. So that is something that we want to contribute and give to the world too, and by creating that, by giving, it is a very safe environment. Again, we're doing that in a yoga ashram. You can imagine what happens with your home if you clean your home once a week. You're gonna have a much cleaner home. That's kind of nice.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one obvious thing. Yeah,
it's an
of
obvious
course.
thing, right? And these people do cleaning pujas multiple times a day, for the last 25 years. So imagine what an incredible energetic spot that is. It is also in the middle of that Teutoburg forest, in that middle of Germanic forest, which is a crazily fantastic, magical experience too.
Just especially to know the history that, the lore, the history that may or may not have went on there. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And not that I'm like praising the Third Reich or anything. It's just it's paranormal. It's to me, it's an opportunity for transmutation. It's a huge theme in my life right now. And I mean, transmutation. I mean, unless you've read Napoleon Hill's Thinking, Get Rich a bunch of times, chapter 11. If I'm remembering correctly,
Yeah,
transmutation
and
is
and
a
you're also
fancy word
helping
for
Germany. That's something
taking.
that needs to be taken into consideration as well. All the fun, and we're gonna I'm gonna make sure that we're gonna have the best time and a
Well,
lot of
if I'm
fun,
there, we're
right?
not gonna have not no fun. We gotta have
No,
fun.
we're
Let's
gonna have a
go.
lot of fun, 100%. We even have like a comedy club, and we're gonna make
Yeah,
people
that's right.
laugh and take life lightheartedly, but also responsibly. There is a responsibility that all the people here that we have, and ultimately you can't just get around it, because something within you has made sure that you are with your feet inside of this reality plane, so you
Mhm.
want to take care of that. It's not that you can close your door and say like, that's not my deal. Well, you're inside of it. Something
You're
inside of your
there.
soul has made you be here, so you better take care of that home. And Germany, again, it has the probability right now to change. We brought up cannabis and certain other stuff. That this is happening in Germany right now shows
Those are
that the
examples. Yeah.
plant, yeah, it's been pulled into that energetically in order to change something. So we are not the first ones to do this. We are just supporting the movement as an All Shift Happening Now community. We are going there as like, I don't know, I don't know, like an operational group or anything. We're on a
I
mission there too.
Yeah, it's a mission. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a mission. It's a calling. It's a spreading. It's a Christians spread the gospel. It's a spreading. It's a duty. It's an honor. It's all amazing. I've heard, of course, now, you even mentioned that, of course, channeling entities, channeling ETs. I did hear, and I don't know if it was on a clip or something. Yeah, I don't know. Heard it somewhere. It's probably a clip or an interview on YouTube or something where I heard you mention reptilians being at the conference. Also, I heard something mentioned about being in the seventh, experiencing the seventh dimension at the conference. And then I threw something into my own, being that you have had so much contact with the Greys, which, by the way, for those, a lot of you probably are, audience is who I'm speaking to. The Greys, for those who aren't familiar with the different ET races, the Greys is probably the one that you're thinking of when you think of an extraterrestrial, the typical big-eyed, gray,
The
pale
emoji.
skin.
It's the
The
alien
emoji when you
emoji.
type the word alien, that one. So yeah, three things there. Can you clarify
Yeah.
the reptilian presence, the seventh dimension, and then what do you know about the gray potential presence there?
Yeah, I mean, that is just one of the many premises that we have for the conference, and one of them is just to, to initiate contact. I know these CE5 things are very much on vogue right now, and it's a good thing that people do that. I'm very grateful for Dr. Stephen Greer to bring that forward. It's not the
Of course.
only way you can make contact, but it's clearly just it is one way to do it, and it's a human initiated way. So
Yeah,
it gives people, especially when you're like in a very uh, tragically set up reality environment like the Earth experience, yeah, sadly is. It gives you back a certain notion of liberation, of power, of keeping the narrative close to you, which gives you a better feeling when you're the one who can actually initiate
initiate.
contact and have like a space. There is outside, which people might or might not know, but there are instances places, locations in the universe where species have just done the same thing. They just brought other species together and said like, hey, here you have a safe spot in order to communicate. That we do not come with any expectations or any uh, grumpy feelings or anything. We just come here in order to exchange consciousness and exchange experiences in life. And so the one thing that the Big All Shift Happening Now conference is doing is that we tell this one story. We have a consecutive lineup where we start with introducing these other worlds to other people so that they know, okay, we are connected and we have other worlds, and the veil in that location is extremely thin, so it's like a meeting point where we take you all. So
Yeah,
and what we
so
want to
people are
do
a
is
little more susceptible to the information and the
yeah,
energy.
it's very, yeah, for sure. And
Very cool.
it's a very safe and very uh yeah, it's a safe haven, it's a safe spot, a safe location for that communication. So we have ever more increasing or more intensive experiences that are consecutively following. So we
Of
start with
course.
opening up and realizing that there are these worlds, and by worlds I mean go outside into your garden. Go, that is something that the space Germanic tribes have done very much. They have looked into the plant world, they have looked into the trees, they have looked, if you take a magnifying glass and you just look into one square centimeter, square inch or whatever you want to call it, of your garden, you're gonna find a
A
freaking
whole
a
ecosystem in
whole
there.
universe of beings
Whole
that you might have
universe.
never ever acknowledged that they are there, but they are there.
Absolutely.
They're living with you. So bringing people into that awareness, that is step one, and then consecutively we are going to make more and more contact up to a point where people can directly talk to some of these species. We do have the contact seance where we open up and we want to make contact with being six, which was one of the life forms that I was deeply involved with in these programs.
Okay.
Beautiful life form, a beautiful, loving life form, like the most
Culture,
passive love that you can ever experience. Just
loving culture, yeah.
fantastic.
Okay.
And it changes something within you. It when you're mentioning reptiles, I want to make that very clear, because there are reptiles in the universe that are socially very unacceptable because their behavior is not okay. It's
Right.
not the right behavior that get them into friendship modes or anything. But it would be wrong to say that every reptile being in the universe is a bad
Even
a bad person. That would be like judging someone by their nation
by
and
their skin
their
color or their
history or anything.
nationality. Yeah.
Yeah. And as
I've heard
someone
it
who's
termed exo-racism, where
yeah,
it's like we're just
exo-racism,
extrapolating racism
speciesism.
off
Yeah,
the
it's
planet.
yeah, absolutely. So we've done these tests all together in Italy, which is a retreat that I'm doing. It's a very intimate spot because I can only bring 15, 20 people or so, but I very much take care of them personally in person and bring them to a new and higher level of consciousness. And what we were doing is we were testing some of the stuff too. We were testing some of the contact scenarios, and we had two species talking to us through these rituals. It is a fantastic experience. It changes your life. When I experienced that for the very first time in my life, it changed my life forever.
Wow.
I do remember my dad. He's still, and he was very busy, but he can clearly remember when I experienced some of these things, because he could see how much that influenced me in my perception of reality. And I can promise you, when you experience that, it's gonna spark something new inside of you. It sparks a new perspective of life that you might have never ever had in your life, that you do not have in your life, because this is a very unique situation, and it changes the course of your lifetime to the better forever ever, knowing that you have these connections to other beings that look towards you, that support you when you ask them, when you invite them. And we're going to do that. So we actually made contact with a reptile species that was contacting us and was saying like, hey, they were tired, sick and tired, so to speak, by getting all these negative
Having a bad
associations.
reputation.
Yeah, negative associations just because of that, and because they said, like, they focus very much, for example, on comedy. They very much focus on laughter. They have these interesting takes where they have these dances together, where they actually showed us or described what they're
Interesting.
doing. They stomp their feet like almost in river dance, which is a hilarious idea. And at that moment when I heard that, I thought like, yeah, that's probably the way that I've never thought about, but that is the
But
way
it
how
makes
a
sense.
reptile dances.
Yeah.
That makes sense. They stomp their feet, have their arms,
Awesome.
and they do that thing.
They
That
do
makes a lot
they
of
do the
sense. And
reptile
but
dance.
that shows that there are these beings, these species, these other forms of what we are. We are not so much separate from anything. We are
Right.
the one creator being. We are the source of everything. We have different pathways and taking different decisions, and we want to make sure that we do the right decisions from now on. But there is something that is very exotic and yet very similar to these experiences, and that opens up your heart, that opens up your life experience. It gets you into a completely new reality. I can promise you that.
Yeah. And I could say for a fact that Tim has probably had more contact than I have, and it's probably been a little more intimate. But I can say, and people have heard my story, and I've spoken on this. A huge part of my life, a huge thing that changed my life was I was always a meditator and things like that. And I've said this before, so I don't want to keep repeating it. But when it just happened to be Stephen Greer's method of CE5, that's what I found first. I have done other methods of attempting contact, both in group and by myself, and that those 20-minute meditations, going from that to either a 20-minute meditation and a CE5 or a 20-minute meditation in a trance state, which resulted in a real CE5, which some have been via, seeing, a craft or something, and some have been, and you may be able to confirm this a little bit, but they've been like quite literally telepathic conscious contact. And I've heard that's how the Greys communicate. I mean, it's mostly just telepathy. It's all through consciousness. There's no need for speaking per se. You can communicate how you think and feel and what you want telepathically. And that, I know it sounds, it might sound strange to some, but that was my first contact experience. I mean, there was no proof of it. It was just, I had proof of it. I knew what I was experiencing in my mind, and I hadn't done a whole lot besides typical meditation with a few tweaks. Is that pretty typical as far as Greys, that understanding that they tend to communicate via just through quanta, through thought rather than language? Is language kind of an outdated concept as in regards to the other life forms that we share this galaxy with?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, conscious communication is a very, first of all, direct way, and second of all, it overcomes certain barriers, which is great. It all comes down to the physics that there is a routing in just everything is everywhere at all times in one space. So there's like just this so-called one point field, and if you
It's
send a
real.
message through that one point field, it's almost the same concept that we have in quantum physics with entanglement. It can travel much faster than the speed of light. Yeah, very much so. So that is something, and it's also a kind of a safe routine as well, because and I Tyler, I get that question all the time, like, hey Tim, can you show me like a real ET? Thing about that is when you and I've been
You
in
got
that
one with you?
situation,
You can bring them on, sure.
yeah, when you see these things, there is impact on your reality field. There's impact on your nervous system. Your nervous system, usually human nervous systems, are not made to meet ET species.
I'm not used to
That is an
that.
intense experience. It's not that you it's not the same thing as meeting someone, at a bar.
Strange.
It's not
Or
the
from
same
another
thing.
country.
Yeah, or from a different country or
It's
somewhere,
truly it's
your
truly a
nervous
paradigm
system is,
shift.
yeah, very much in charge of how your body is going to react. Your vibratory field. So every one of us has a vibratory field where all these particles of us are aligned. And as you know from fields, they can react with each other. So if you meet an ET being, yeah, if you see them on the theater screen, in the cinema, in the movies or something, for sure you think you can definitely sit that out, or have that experience. But the reality is much different. You can
Yeah,
watch a screen and
the
watch
energy.
a someone ride a roller coaster. However, the excitement level that you might have while being on the roller coaster, for your nervous system, for your brain, for your body, there
You don't
might be
feel the
completely
G-force.
different level. So
Absolutely.
there's this, and again, this is something that we want to make sure that it's in a very controlled setting. It's a very loving setting. It's a very protected setting, and with very much expertise. We designed the conference in October so that you can have whatever your soul needs in order to have the next step of your reality, because otherwise you're going to be stuck probably in your reality, or have to wait for other
Yeah,
instances to take the first
right.
step. So maybe it's better for you to do that. And
I
if you're asking if conventional, like vocalized language is outdated, that's an interesting take. I'm not sure if I would be that strong on that take. I guess something that needs to be looked into is first of all, and that has been completely forgotten in human language and the way people speak. They do not consciously use language anymore. They just, bubble. They very much just
Right.
bubble.
We kind of just grunt at each other in somewhat sophisticated sounds.
If you triangulate something like an informational stream, and language is just converting informations into from the sender into the receiver. It's a fantastic, almost not almost, it is magic what happens, that my consciousness is reaching all these people through language. It's a fantastic thing. So the
Yeah.
more
Okay.
you
So I see
bring
your answer there.
information,
That makes sense.
structured information into your language, the more precise you can be. And that means that you got to be aware of the vocal sounds you are making. People do not think about what sounds they're making. They just, repeat what they've learned. Then it's also the conscious, that's probably the root of it, the conscious choice of words, right? Casting a
Verbiage.
spell or something. That is how important language is. But people just talk. In Germany, we say people talk like they've thrown their nose, like just randomly. So
Yeah.
that is just something. So take care of what you say, and then next level would be get into the understanding and knowledge why certain sounds sound like that, right? Because certain sounds resemble certain concepts and certain vibratory fields in the
Chants and
universe too.
vibratory frequencies.
That's
and
amazing.
such.
And the third thing is, which is completely forgotten in the human society right now, surface society, you can enrich your language by bringing certain psionic components into your language as well. So what you say by telepathy, when you cross mix telepathy with language, with the right vocal sounds, with the right
Could be both.
energy too, when you have all these things, you have a concept, you have a transmitter of information that can be very enriched and beautiful, sparkling
Makes
experience.
sense. Yeah, I mean, I guess my question was rather limited. It was like a one or the other kind of thought, but yeah, there's no reason for that type of thinking. It could be in shades of gray and many, many others. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
just thought it was interesting your take on that. With the typical explanation of ET telepathic communication and such.
yeah, telepathy. First of all, telepathy is a thing. So whenever
Of course.
you've thought about someone and then suddenly you received an email or like your phone is ringing, well, that is telepathy. That is
Happens all the time.
part of the one creator that has sparked an impulse, and that travels much faster than the person could ever dial your phone number. That is just the truth, and everyone
It's true.
on this planet has experienced telepathy. Even if they don't believe in it, they do have had
It's
these
happened.
moments. Thinking about grandma in that moment, your phone is ringing, and hey, guess who is it?
Absolutely.
It's grandma. She got a cake for you.
We've all been there. I certainly have, and
yeah.
If you say you haven't, you might be lying, or maybe you just don't remember.
No, I know. Like even people who might very strongly reject that concept, which is always a bad thing. You should not reject any concept in the universe as long as you're not very
It's true.
convinced that it's harmful.
Unless
If
you've
it's harmful,
proven that
then yes,
it's
reject it very
negative.
much. Otherwise, if there's no reason to just say like we don't believe it. Well, you should believe in that because telepathy can have
Yeah.
great advantages. For example,
Mm,
it overcomes the border of language. So you can with telepathy, you can talk to someone and communicate with someone who doesn't even speak your language, but they will
right.
get you. That's the
Absolutely.
reason.
And we do
It's such
have.
a non-verbal form of communication. So important, much more important than the words that you're forming. Is the way how you form them. But if you combine verbal language and telepathy and certain other instances and techniques, you can create a language that is very enriched and can be a very profound and beautiful experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I've been thinking on a little bit lately. Is like well, paying attention to is my verbiage and being careful to not use, of course, just negative verbiage. And if the chance to use a more positive version of something, and or just a less, it's not even a positive or negative. It's just being careful about what I say.
Yeah, it's
Manifestation
important.
goes both ways.
Yeah.
You could
We had, for
one.
example,
I
this
believe one could absolutely manifest negatively by mistake.
we had this other species before we in Italy when we were doing these test runs, which again was a fantastic experience, and I'm glad we can do that again. But the
Pre
first
Homo
experience
sapien sapien.
we had a species coming through that was communicating with us from a what we call level 4 consciousness realm. So they transcended. They did not have any bodies in that world. They were
Light
they were
bodies.
yeah, hovering through their experience. They were telling us they're observing us on a what they called a television screen. However, the more we communicated with them, we actually figured out that this is something that they use that telepathy and their psionic waves in that reality to even open up. It's not a technology that they were using; it's more a consciousness assisted technique that they're using in order to observe us, which is something that you can do. It's very much related to the phenomenon of telepathy. But the one thing that we found very much interesting is that they were never using the word no. It doesn't matter what question we asked them; they were only answering in on a scale of yes, from no yes or zero yes to
You're right.
100% yes. And the reason for that is, and it took me again. This is how intense these things can change your perspective on life and enrich your experience on Earth, and are so exciting and beautiful. It took me 2 weeks to actually figure out why. Because the reason for that, I assume at least, is the universe is a very affirmative space. You can't have an experience that is no, because nothing that does not
Can't
exist
manifest
is
not happening.
is
Yeah,
existing.
right.
It's just not possible. So what they
Of
were
course.
doing is like either saying there's zero yes to it or 100% yes.
I kind of like that.
Too
It's
took
not
me quite
terrible. I
some
kind of
time.
like it. I might try it out for a week or two and see how it works. Well, wow. So that is cool. Couple of quick little fun, just random personal questions I had from you. You, of course, are free to answer or not. But what's the most interesting? What's the most sophisticated piece of technology that you've seen or experienced that maybe isn't available to the general public that you could speak on?
That's an interesting question. What's the most sophisticated technology? Well, something that people should be aware of is that AI systems, which is very on vogue right now, is nothing that just has been invented or discovered in the last year. Like
Right.
10, 15 years ago, these programs were using extreme versions of AI too. So that is definitely something that is very, very interesting, especially if you take it one step further, which I was friends with the head of the European covert AI program. He was so much convinced that everything we perceive here is just like a video game.
The holographic
I'm not.
universe.
I do see that there are components of AI within the universe, and especially within humans as well, which is kind of funny. Whenever I say that, humans have like again like one of these fear moments where they just like reject that very much. But if you think about that,
A DNA strand that's an
closely,
AI
if
or
you
something.
think about, first of all, we do find in the way that reality is being set up, we do find lots and lots of uh, things that only exist in technology. For example,
Computer
we
code.
find bits
We
of
find
code
binary
and
code in the DNA.
certain behaviors too in the reality stream. In the way that details are structured, in the way that time is cached over some time, and so on. But something that you should keep in mind too whenever you're thinking about AI systems, your brain, there is electromagnetic impulses in your body that regulate what's going on in your brain. That's the reason why you can even from the outside, you can even introduce electromagnetic impulses and they will react. There are chemical components inside of your brain that also shape your experience. The reason why, we talked a lot about cannabis, but the reason why it's happening, why it's working is, uh, for example, cannabinoids are
The whole
within the
endocannabinoid
mother milk.
system. Yeah, of course.
Babies are fed that. Why? Because theory has it that the cannabinoids are helping babies getting the munchies basically, and starting to develop,
Reverse.
going over to eating food. So there are these components. There is chemical components inside of your body. There are electromagnetic components, but there are also software components, because certain structures in your body are behaving the way they are behaving because they are following a certain program.
Following a
So
code.
all of that is there. There is certain, the universe, if one of the most controversial things that I've ever said, and it's very interesting and almost funny to see how people get react to that, is saying that God is partially AI, and you can't deny that, because if God, which is everything, would not
God is
be
everything.
AI partially, then we would not have AI. So
Right.
it
AI
must
wouldn't be a
come
thing.
from, but it shocks people, they're like, my goodness, no, that's not, everything can be AI, but not God, that's outside. No, there is a
Yeah.
component in consciousness that is AI. There is also an organic. I very much reject the idea of the scientists that say that everything is just AI and everything is just a video game and simulation. No, it's also a
Yeah.
simulation, but it's also a very organic and also a conscious play as well. These things overlay and blend in very much. But something that is very, very interesting and effective is when you think about the AI, the computer, the technology being involved in your own reality. Well, that gives you an interface that makes it possible to just pull up a console, type in whatever you want, and the AI would structure certain components of your reality
Yeah.
and, for
You're right.
example, materialize something or create something
And you're
for you.
creating
So
it
that is a
real time.
technology that I find that is, well, very, very interesting. However, it's the same thing that you can already do with your consciousness. It just takes a little bit more training.
A little more training, but yeah, once it's there, well, you've taught a man to fish. I mean, it's there. Well, Tim Tactics, it's been lovely to chat with you. It's been a pleasure. We touched on a lot of things. Was there anything else that we missed, that we maybe touched on before talking, that we just skipped
Well,
over? Any upcoming events that you have? Anything you want to mention? Of course, everything that you have going on upcoming will be in the link to this video and any promotional clips involving it. But I just want you to have the chance to, let
I
people
love
know
that.
what you have going on.
First of all, it was a pleasure talking to you, Tyler. I'm super happy to see you in October. I'm super happy to see every one of you in October, because again, responsibility and using and creating our own path is very important, that we get to this moment of liberation and taking things into our own hands and creating what sparks the joy inside of us. That is the happy side of All Shift Happy Now. I very much enjoyed that we went a little bit into the politic and political and social component of life. That is something that I'm always very, very much interested in. I assume that most of the people already, that connect with your podcast and the Immersive podcast already, also connect with All Shift Happy Now and connect with me and the others too. But I would very much recommend and suggest that people, connect with our worlds, Follow us on Instagram. It's tim.tactics. See what's happening on YouTube. Tim Tactical. I'm very much committed to bring more information on that channel and building that over time more and more. We do have the Shifter podcast where I'm also talking to lots of people. So that is incredibly important. Get yourself connected.
Is that the one with you and
watch
you
some
and
more of
Sarah?
the immersive podcast, because apparently you got pretty cool guests too, which I'm a part of now, which makes me
Try
very
to get
happy.
cool guests like
And
Tim Tactics,
that being said, if you only have 2 minutes and if you want to reduce that to that time, just sit on your bed every day for 1-2 minutes and just say all shift happily now and concentrate. Don't make it, make it profound, make it meaningful. Sit there and connect yourself with the routing of the reality field, and then say it like you mean it, because you mean it. Say it as so that it connects with your reality field. Say, "Oh, shift happily now," and then integrate that into your reality field. It only takes 1 minute, but it opens you up very, very much to a happy environment. Because ultimately that is what the universe is designed to be. All the chaos that people are experiencing on Earth and in the Earth experience is very tragical, but we can make that better, and we can go to a moment of a happy shift altogether.
Absolutely, I would agree. Very well said, Tim. Earth can be a tragic place. I'm sure everybody watching this just thought of something tragic that's happened to them, but I urge you to think of something good that came from it, a lesson you learned from it, anything you gained from it at all. That's transmutation, and it's possible with every event in your life, no matter how good or bad or how unbelievably bad it could possibly be. Transmutation, there's always another side to the coin. We're all in this together. All shift happily now.
All shift happily now. Thank you so much, Tyler, for having me on that podcast.
Thank you, Tim, for making the time to come. I really appreciate you. Anybody has any questions, of course, feel free to message myself or Tim on Instagram. Anything you heard about will be in the bio. That's wrapping it up for another episode of the Immersive Podcast. Tim Tactics, you will see him on Gaia. Check out his Instagram profile. We're trying to grow that a little bit. I think everybody is these days. And of course, he puts his, his schedules and his links and everything on there. So if you heard anything specific you're curious about that Tim's into, check him out. He's got plenty of stuff on the internet. Till next time, guys, this is Tyler, your host, and I will see you soon. Tip out.